Where did you stumble upon this video? YouTube? Instagram Reels? TikTok at 2 a.m. when you should have been sleeping? Doesn't matter, you're here now. And trust me, you don't want to miss what's about to unfold. Before you get too deep, pause. Hit the comments. Tell me where you found this story. Because what happened to me could happen to anyone who believes peace, privacy, and property still mean something. And if you've dealt with an HOA nightmare, especially one involving a so-called Karen, you'll want to stick around. Now buckle in. Because the woman who called the cops on me, she had no clue her entire plan was about to collapse. On camera, with her name all over the trespass report. Let's rewind. That MY name is Lucas. I work in IT, which means I solve other people's messes for a living. In return, I demand one thing: peace. That's why I bought my lake cabin. It wasn't fancy. 2 bedrooms, some old wood paneling, a dock that creaked in the wind, but it was mine. My parents left it to me after they passed. Growing up, we spent every summer fishing, swimming, and watching the stars from the porch. That place meant more to me than any office bonus or tech upgrade. I live in the city, but every weekend, I'd make the 3-hour drive just to clear my head. That cabin kept me sane. And then she showed up, about 2 years ago. A new housing development started popping up across the other side of the lake. It was one of those prefabricated HOA villages. You know, cookie-cutter houses, speed bumps every 200 feet, and enough rules to make a prison look like summer camp. At first, I didn't care. They were on their side, I was on mine. The lake was state-owned, so the water itself was public, but my land, my dock, my fire pit, 100% private. Then came Karen. Her real name is Melanie, but trust me, if you saw her, heard her, or read the 13 typed HOA emails she sent me over the span of 3 weeks, you'd call her Karen too. It started small. I pulled into the cabin one Friday and saw a group of people having a full-blown party on my deck. Not near it, not beside it, on it. They had dragged a folding table onto the dock, set up speakers, coolers, even a grill. 2 guys were jumping into the water. A kid was throwing marshmallows into the fire pit. I blinked. Thought maybe I had the wrong day. Maybe my cousin had come up early. Nope. I walked up and asked, "Excuse me, what are you doing?" One woman, in oversized sunglasses and a flowy lake dress, snapped her fingers toward me. "We're renting the place for the weekend." I laughed. "That's funny. I own this place." The color drained from her face. She turned to another woman. "Didn't Melanie say this cabin was part of the community access?" I stood still. "Melanie who?" Enter HOA Karen. Apparently, Karen had been telling her new neighborhood that the lakeside cabin with the dock was a shared amenity. She printed maps labeling my land as open for gatherings. She even said her cousin was managing rentals for the HOA through a private site. You heard me. My cabin, listed for rent, by people who don't own an inch of it. I made them leave. No yelling, no fighting. Just walked them through the lines on my property deed, pointed to the signs, which they ignored, and politely said I'd call the sheriff if they didn't pack up. They left. Karen did not. The next morning, I got a knock. "Karen, tennis visor, glitter tumbler, that self-important stare. You made my guests feel unsafe. Your guests were trespassing. This is a community lake." They were told this was part of our shared space. By who? I don't have to explain myself. To someone who doesn't understand the spirit of the neighborhood. That's when she made the threat. "If you don't allow our members to access the cabin, we'll bring this up with the county. You'll be reported for discrimination." I smiled. Not because I was amused, but because every second of that interaction was recorded. You see, after the first surprise party, I installed a set of discreet trail cameras around the dock, near the fire pit, and, most importantly, on the path from the road. I reviewed the footage. Not only had her guests trespassed, they'd entered through the woods behind my property. One man had jimmied open the locked gate. They had no right to be there. And Karen had clearly told them they could. I sent everything to my attorney. Then I filed the trespass report. 2 days later, I get a call from the sheriff's office. Apparently, Karen had beat me to it. She reported me for harassment and intimidation of community guests. When the deputy showed up, I handed him the flash drive. 10 minutes later, he handed it back. "I suggest you come down and file your version officially," he said. "This looks real bad for them." And it got worse, because Karen had lied on the police report. She said I shouted, cursed, even threw a cooler. None of that happened. She claimed the cabin was part of a community easement, which was impossible. My property is not part of their HOA. Never was. Never could be. That cabin had stood for 40 years before their neighborhood existed. The sheriff's department dropped her complaint. They opened an investigation on her. Fraud, misrepresentation, false rental listings, unlawful entry. And when word got out, oh, the chaos. HOA members were furious. Because it turns out, Karen had charged them reservation fees for weekends at the cabin. She took money, pocketed it. They thought they were renting from a community fund. It was just her side hustle that I started getting apologies. Notes from families. One guy even dropped off a bottle of bourbon and said, "We had no idea." Karen tried to do damage control. She emailed the neighborhood saying I was exaggerating and trying to privatize shared land. She said she'd always had verbal permission from the original owner. You mean my dad? I posted a photo of my dad holding a fish on that dock in 1993. The caption read, "This man built this cabin, this dock, that grill." And no, he never gave anyone verbal permission. A month later, Karen was voted off the HOA board. 2 weeks after that, she was served papers. Civil court. Not from me, from her own neighbors. I stayed out of it until the local news picked it up. Lake cabin trespass scandal, fake rentals, and HOA fraud. I gave a short statement. Said I wanted nothing but peace and respect for boundaries. And guess what? That's exactly what I've had ever since. So if you're still watching, here's what I'll leave you with. Some people think rules don't apply to them. Some think community means they get to decide who belongs. Some even think they can steal what isn't theirs and cover it with a smile and a spreadsheet. But when you own something and you know you're in the right, don't back down, because sometimes the lake fights back and sometimes the cabin watches everything. Hit the comments. Tell me your HOA horror story. I read every one.